White people don't have no problem when it's black on black crime. Smoking on Tuka, they didn't have no. So now we smoking on Charlie Kirk. Too far. Too far? Oh my goodness. So y'all didn't go too far with George Floyd. He has a family. Come on, white people, don't be hypocrites.
When Charleston White dissed black rappers, nobody cared. But the moment he went after Charlie Kirk, his shows got canceled, his YouTube got banned, and the internet went crazy. Why is that? And what does it really say about power in America? Let's break it all down. When Charleston White first stepped into the spotlight, he wasn't simply another voice in the crowded world of online commentary, he was a cultural moment. For many in the black community, White represented something raw, unfiltered, and unapologetically bold. He spoke in a way that resonated with people who were tired of political correctness and surface-level debates. His early reputation was built on authenticity. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. And in a digital age where curated images and brand-safe messaging dominate, that unpolished honesty felt refreshing. It's no wonder that large segments of the black audience initially gravitated toward him, embracing his unapologetic demeanor and fiery delivery. But as time went on, White's tone began to shift in ways that caught even his earliest supporters off guard. The very personality that once made him relatable and magnetic also made him unpredictable. Instead of reserving his criticism for institutions, policies, or broad cultural trends, White began to direct his sharpest critiques at black people themselves, most notably rappers. His commentary didn't stop at critiquing the music or the messages it promoted. He went further, targeting individual artists and their lifestyles, calling out both the living and the dead. This was especially jarring when he began disparaging rappers who had passed away. For many in the black community, the death of a rapper, whether through violence, illness, or tragedy, often serves as a moment of collective mourning. It's a time when fans come together to celebrate the contributions of the artist and reflect on the circumstances that cut their lives short. White, however, chose to take those moments of grief and flip them into opportunities for harsh criticism. He spoke disparagingly not only about the deceased rappers themselves, but also about their children and family members. To some, this felt less like honesty and more like cruelty. And yet, in White's mind, his approach had a purpose. He argued that these critiques were necessary to highlight what he saw as a glaring problem: a lack of accountability within the black community. For him, too much of the culture celebrated destructive lifestyles, glorifying criminal behavior, violence, and reckless choices while turning a blind eye to the consequences. By speaking harshly even about the dead, White believed he was forcing uncomfortable but necessary conversations. What made this shift even more controversial was the way he framed his comparisons. While criticizing black communities and their cultural icons, White began praising white people, sometimes in sweeping, generalized ways that struck his audience as jarring. In his commentary, he suggested that white communities often embodied the discipline, organization, and accountability that he felt was lacking among black people. To many of his supporters, this was a bitter pill to swallow. It wasn't just that he was being critical of his own community, it was that he seemed to be uplifting another group in contrast, creating a sense of betrayal. This pivot from celebrated community voice to outspoken critic highlights a tension that has long existed in public discourse: the line between self-criticism and self-sabotage. Within any community, it is important to reflect, critique, and hold one another accountable. Constructive criticism can push a culture forward, helping it evolve in healthier directions. But when criticism feels like condemnation, or when it seems designed to elevate outsiders at the expense of one's own community, can quickly erode trust. White's critics argue that he crossed that line. They say his commentary no longer feels like tough love. Instead, it feels like exploitation. By targeting black rappers, families, and cultural practices while praising white people, he's accused of playing into harmful stereotypes and narratives that outsiders are all too eager to embrace. In essence, he is seen by some as providing cover for racist rhetoric, because if a black man is saying it, then it must be true, right? This dynamic has historical precedent. Throughout history, individuals from marginalized groups who openly criticized their own communities in front of dominant powers often found themselves rewarded with platforms and resources. The establishment loves a contrarian voice, as a contrarian voice is usually one that appears to confirm their biases. And indeed, Charleston White has benefited from this dynamic. His controversial takes made him a hot commodity for podcasts, interviews, and media appearances. For certain audiences, especially conservative or white-dominated spaces, he became the perfect guest. A black man willing to denounce other black people. That kind of commentary, while divisive, creates buzz, drives clicks, and fuels debates. At the same time, this shift has alienated many of the people who once supported him. Fans who initially admired his authenticity and boldness now see him as pandering to outsiders. At the expense of his own community, they argue that his critiques, while occasionally valid, are delivered in ways that tear down rather than build up. Instead of sparking productive conversations, his words often ignite anger, pain, and division. But here's where things get complicated. Charleston White isn't entirely wrong. His central point that accountability is often lacking in discussions about cultural problems isn't baseless. The glorification of violence in rap, the cycles of poverty and crime in many communities, and the lack of open dialogue about solutions are real issues that deserve attention. The question isn't whether these problems exist, it's about how they're addressed. Should they be tackled with compassion, context, and solutions, or with ridicule, provocation, and insults? White clearly prefers the latter. His approach is shock therapy, delivered through controversy. He wants to shake people into paying attention, even if it means offending them. Whether this strategy is effective or destructive depends largely on perspective. To some, his words cut through the noise and force uncomfortable truths into the open. To others, they are unnecessarily divisive, providing entertainment for outsiders while deepening wounds within. The trajectory of Charleston White's career is a study in how public figures evolve and how audiences respond to that evolution. He began as a voice embraced by the black community, admired for his raw honesty and fearlessness. But as his critiques grew sharper and his praise for white people more pronounced, he found himself walking a tightrope, balancing between those who see him as a necessary provocateur and those who view him as a betrayer. Ultimately, Charleston White forces us to confront a bigger question. How do we balance the need for internal accountability with the danger of feeding harmful external narratives? His rise and controversies reflect the delicate dance of identity, loyalty, and truth-telling in a world where every statement is amplified, monetized, and dissected. Whether one sees him as a fearless truth-teller or a destructive opportunist, there's no denying that he has carved out a powerful and polarizing space in today's cultural conversation.
I've been invaded.
Do you think that white people have less power than ever before?
Yes, and they mad about it. And I'm mad about it too. This was a much better country when white people had more power. Yeah. They have less power, and they have a right to be afraid of what America's gonna come to, because we mad at the wrong white people, and today's white people had nothing to do with what our ancestors went through that none of us got to witness.
Facts.
But we want to punish them for it.
Yeah.
In this same interview, Charleston White went even further, openly claiming that he believed white people should be the ones in control of America. His remarks once again circled back to the theme of dysfunction within black culture, a point he has leaned on heavily. Statements like these didn't just stir controversy, they also created new opportunities for him. Suddenly, it wasn't just black audiences paying attention. White podcast hosts and platforms began inviting him on, eager to feature someone willing to criticize black people so directly. And White didn't come cheap. Reports suggest he rarely accepted less than $10,000 for an appearance, with his fee likely climbing higher over time. Even after facing shutdowns on parts of his platform, Charleston Whiteifin, referred to as UNC, has managed to keep thriving, carving out a steady lane for himself. When conservative figure Charlie Kirk passed away, White initially reacted with some sympathy, especially in a conversation with streamer Adin Ross, where he admitted he didn't know much about Kirk but expressed that the loss was unfortunate. However, once White learned more about Kirk's political positions, his outlook shifted, and the tone of his comments changed accordingly.
Charlie Kirk was killed by his own kind. I just want to remind you, Charlie Kirk was killed by his own kind. They came, what can they say? He was taken out by his own lily white babies. We got Y-ends, y'all got W-ends.
The moment Charleston White began mocking Charlie Kirk, the backlash came fast and heavy. Kirk's supporters, along with others who disagreed with White's comments, launched waves of criticism online. It wasn't just diehard conservatives pushing back either. Moderates and figures like Tariq Nash, who himself has faced smear campaigns, doxing attempts, and infiltration, could relate to the kind of online targeting White was now experiencing. Here's where the double standard becomes clear. When White took aim at black people, whether living rappers, the deceased, or even their families, the consequences were minimal. At worst, he faced a few confrontations here and there, but nothing that truly threatened his income or career. Comedy promoters and event organizers weren't canceling his shows because of those remarks. If anything, controversy around his attacks on black culture often fueled his visibility and brought in more business. But once his criticism shifted toward white conservatives, the outcome was very different. Suddenly, doors began to close. White revealed on Twitter that his comedy shows were being canceled and his YouTube channel was banned, moves that directly hit his pockets. In other words, the very groups that once amplified him were now shutting him out, proving that the rules of who can be criticized and who cannot play out in real time when livelihoods are on the line.
Y'all said y'all cancel me. Now what the fuck did happen? Y'all done got in y'all feelings, you white people with animals. I thought y'all said y'all, well, come on now. They just put me on one of the biggest comedy shows September 29th in Atlanta with them now. Oh, you thought y'all can control. No, y'all just got white friends that'll listen to y'all. But you know, white people don't own everything. You know, the Jews and the Asians mostly own everything. Oh, white folk, y'all don't run the country no more. Y'all trying to get it back though. I see you. Y'all scrambling hard enough to get your country back. But guess what? Y'all done let too many people in here. Y'all done let too many people here. This is Babylon. 99 tongues is in your country. And guess who got to get you your product? China. Every goddamn thing you got, white folk, come from China. Made in China. How you go run something and you don't run nothing no more? Your politicians is ran by foreign lobbies and corporations.
Charleston. White pushed back against the backlash by reminding his critics that they don't hold the same power over him as they think. In his words, white America no longer truly owns the country. Foreign groups, particularly Asians and others, control much of the wealth and infrastructure. So, while some of his opportunities may have been blocked, he stressed that one thing couldn't be touched: his comedy shows, especially those in places like Atlanta. That independence, he argued, is what keeps him afloat. And this point connects to a larger truth about ownership and control. In the entertainment world, many careers are fragile because they depend on corporate gatekeepers. Look at the fallout from Will Smith's infamous slap. His income streams from brand deals and Hollywood projects dried up almost overnight. Jonathan Majors faced a similar collapse after allegations surfaced. But Tyler Perry, he's an exception, because Perry owns his studios, his intellectual properties, and the infrastructure behind his productions. He can weather storms in ways others cannot. His ownership shields him. This same principle applies to the black sector of media. Figures like Tariq Nasheed, Corey Holcomb, and Dr. Umar Johnson thrive because they are rooted in their own communities. They're not beholden to mainstream institutions. Instead, they own their platforms and cultivate loyal audiences who follow them wherever they go. Even creators with smaller followings like O'Shea Duke Jackson benefit from this kind of grassroots economy. Charleston. White is now making it clear to white audiences, while he may have profited off their platforms, his foundation is in the black sector. They can cancel shows, restrict his access, or cut off deals, but they can't erase his core audience. His reach in black spaces ensures he'll still have interviews, fans, and income, no matter who tries to shut him down.
You go run something and I in seats. How y'all gonna stop me? And I am the internet now. You see y'all, let me show y'all how bad I am. Let me show you how good I am, folk. I done lost over 24 Instagram pages. I done had 5 this year. Just as soon as y'all delete me, it increases my status. Oh, they banned Charleston. Guess what? I got a YouTube page that I started 3 days ago. It's already monetized. That's just the power of Charleston. I got about 6 interviews lined up, 4 within the next couple of days. That money's pretty good. Now all of a sudden, here come a man who was born to sin, that's gonna die in sin, but may not die a sinner, and y'all are worshiping like as if he's Jesus. No.
What Charleston White is experiencing highlights a broader truth about how power, speech, and livelihoods are tied together in America. He's pointing out that many white Americans don't truly control the economic systems. They think they do. Much of that power lies elsewhere. But his deeper point is about ownership and security. When you build your career in a space that isn't dependent on mainstream approval, you're far harder to cancel. This isn't just theory, it plays out every day. Many black professionals in government jobs or private sector positions can lose everything over a single misstep, even something said off the clock. Once you work for an institution, you represent it 24/7, whether you realize it or not. And if your actions reflect poorly on that institution, the consequences can be swift and brutal. Look at EDP 445. Once a popular he wasn't employed by YouTube. Yet when his predatory behavior was exposed in a sting operation, his reputation torched the platform by association. As a result, he lost not only his channel but also his social media accounts, side hustles, and even the ability to work with companies like Uber or Lyft. The stain followed him everywhere until he had to legally change his name just to find employment. His downfall wasn't about what he did on YouTube, it was about how his personal conduct damaged the brand that hosted him. Charleston White's situation is different because his foundation isn't tied to those institutions. His content may be controversial, but his support base in Black America shields him from total cancellation. Black audiences, accustomed to his harsh takes even when they sting, don't abandon him when he pivots. That loyalty creates resilience. White audiences, however, aren't used to being on the receiving end of his criticism, which is why his comments about Charlie Kirk triggered cancellations and bans. Duke Jackson makes an important observation when he points out that there is simply too much money flowing through black media and entertainment for someone like Charleston White to ever be completely erased. Cancel culture may affect individual opportunities, but it cannot dismantle a figure who has built a presence within a self-sustaining ecosystem. Charleston White, controversial as he may be, has positioned himself in what's often referred to as the black sector. This sector is more than just a niche, it is a vibrant economy built on community, loyalty, and cultural influence. It gives him a kind of insulation that many mainstream entertainers or influencers do not enjoy. Here's why that matters. When someone is heavily tied to corporate sponsorships, major record labels, or Hollywood studios, their livelihood can disappear overnight if those institutions decide to cut ties. Their careers are built on relationships with organizations that prioritize reputation and public perception above all else. A single scandal, offensive remark, or unpopular opinion can be enough to shut down endorsement deals, cancel tours, and erase television opportunities. In those spaces, public approval is currency and losing it can mean financial ruin. But the black sector operates differently. This community is not primarily controlled by traditional institutions or gatekeepers. Instead, it thrives on independent media platforms, social media channels, grassroots support, and direct-to-consumer relationships. Figures who operate within it, whether they are YouTubers, podcasters, comedians, or independent filmmakers, tend to own their content, their platforms, or at least their brand. They may not have the same glossy mainstream visibility, but they have something far more important: ownership and loyal audiences who are willing to follow them wherever they go. Charleston White benefits from this structure. Even when YouTube suspends his account or a comedy venue cancels one of his shows, he can still pivot. He can book appearances with black-owned podcasts, perform in smaller venues, or sell directly to his fan base. His audience isn't built on the approval of white conservative institutions or corporate sponsors. It's built on people who tune in specifically for his controversial takes, raw delivery, and unfiltered commentary. For them, his controversy is part of the appeal. They don't see it as a reason to abandon him, they see it as validation of why they follow him in the first place. This is the long-term advantage of building ownership and influence among your own people. It creates a kind of financial and cultural stability that shields figures from being fully erased. As long as Charleston White has supporters within Black America, he will continue to have stages to perform on, interviews to give, and an audience ready to pay attention. And this isn't unique to him. Other cultural figures, like Tariq Nasheed, Dr. Umar Johnson, or even comedians like Corey Holcomb, benefit from the same kind of insulation. Their base doesn't evaporate when controversy arises. If anything, it often strengthens their standing. What's more, this insulation highlights a broader truth about the nature of media in the 21st century. The traditional gatekeeper studios, record labels, mainstream news outlets are no longer the only arbiters of success. Independent platforms, niche audiences, and community-driven economies now carry tremendous power. Black media, in particular, has proven to be a self-sustaining ecosystem where billions of dollars circulate annually through music, fashion, podcasts, film, and digital content. Within this system, there is room for voices that would otherwise be silenced in mainstream spaces. So while Charleston White's critics may succeed in shutting certain doors, they cannot shut them all. He has already built too much recognition and too strong a base for that. In fact, attempts to cancel him in mainstream spaces often only fuel his narrative, reinforcing his claims that he speaks uncomfortable truths that they don't want you to hear. That dynamic keeps him relevant, profitable, and difficult to erase. The lesson here is bigger than Charleston White himself. True security in a volatile media landscape doesn't come from appeasing corporations or chasing mainstream acceptance. It comes from cultivating ownership, building a loyal base, and planting roots in a community that supports you regardless of outside pressure. For Charleston White, that community is Black America, and as long as he remains embedded in that sector, he will continue to thrive in when the larger world tries to shut him out.